original plot of Coraline was different by Josh Muti. As you can tell, I'm using a different app. This app sucked. Just squishing down my... Ah! I just need to move.
What if Coraline was a completely different movie than what you saw? Leica Studios cut a significant amount of content from Coraline. Scenes were deleted, entire musical numbers were scrapped, and changes from the original book drastically altered the story. And while you might know a few of these, today I've gathered every single deleted scene, cut concept, and major change to the story that I could find. And trust me, there are plenty that you might have never even heard of before. From an entire soundtrack that was rejected to deleted scenes that would have made the film even creepier, these are the concepts that never made it to the big screen. And stay to the end because some of them might blow your mind. Before we get into every specific deleted content, you need to understand that Coraline went through extensive development as it transformed from Neil Gaiman's 2002 novel into Leica Studios' first feature film in 2009. Director Henry Selick, the mastermind behind The Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach, had to expand Gaiman's relatively short children's book into a feature-length film. According to Selick, when he first read the book, he realized that a direct adaptation would lead to maybe a 47-minute movie. The story needed to be expanded, characters needed to be added, and visual concepts needed to be developed that went far beyond what existed on the page. And what's fascinating is that Gaiman and Selick worked together somewhat relatively close during the whole process. According to interviews, Gaiman told Selick about his idea before he had actually finished writing the book, and they checked in with each other as they developed their respective versions. This is why the general concept and conflict are the same, but the execution differs significantly between the book and film. Perhaps the most surprising deleted element from Coraline is something most fans have no idea about. The film was originally supposed to feature a full soundtrack by indie rock legends They Might Be Giants. That's right. An entire soundtrack was completely scrapped. Can you imagine doing so much work and then all of a sudden you just find out it's not there anymore? That would suck. They were hired to write and record an entire soundtrack for Coraline. Director Henry Selick was a huge fan, saying that when he went on car trips with his two young sons, the only music they could agree on was They Might Be Giants. And according to band member John Flansburgh, They Might Be Giants did extensive preliminary work on the film. They wrote multiple songs, recorded demos, and invested significant time into the project. But as production continued, creative differences emerged. Flansburgh explained it was a strange experience. They basically wanted the music to be more creepy. It was very unfortunate. We did a lot of the work, there was a lot of false starts, and we really never found a rhythm to work with them. Rhythm, you get it? Yeah, dad joke. Director Henry Selick later elaborated on what happened, pretty much stating that the film just changed. It wasn't going to become a musical, which now thinking back, I'm a huge fan of Corpse Bride, so something like Coraline involving a lot of music or being a musical would have been fascinating to see and honestly would have changed the story completely. Right? Imagine Coraline singing. I think that would have changed a lot. One song that was written for Coraline but didn't make the cut was Careful What You Pack, which the band later released on their 2007 album, The Else. They Might Be Giants have stated they were fully paid for their work and have mentioned that other unused songs from the Coraline sessions might eventually be released, but as of 2025, none have been specifically identified or made public. Instead of whimsical indie rock sound, the film features Bruno Colas' haunting orchestra score, performed by the Budapest Symphony Orchestra and featuring choral pieces sung by the Children's Choir of Nice in a nonsense language. While Bruno's score is absolutely brilliant and perfectly suits the film's eerie tone, it's fascinating to imagine that there could have been an alternate rock version of this movie, which really has me wondering what that would have sounded like, and would the movie be as successful as it was? The Laika Studios Edition Blu-ray release includes 6 different deleted scenes with introductions by director Henry Selick. So let's break down each one. The first deleted scene was called Dad's Disgusting Dinner. This is an extended version of the scene where Coraline's real father, Charlie, makes one of his notoriously terrible dinners. In the final film, we see Charlie cooking, but this deleted scene is much longer and provides more context for Coraline's family dynamic. In the deleted version, Coraline's mother Mel is arguing with Charlie about him not backing up his computer files. Charlie insists it might just be a virus, and Coraline quips,
"I think dinner might have a virus."
Which, let's be honest, we all can relate. There's one of our parents that is probably not a very good cook. Or cook stuff that you're just like, yep, that's definitely Dad's dinner. Charlie continues to sing a song to Coraline while cooking, trying to make the best of the situation. Coraline then comes back into the house carrying dead flowers for her mother to photograph for the new catalog she's working on. While looking at the flowers, Coraline spots a bug on one of them and flicks it into the air, where it lands directly in Mel's coffee cup. Mel then tells Coraline some disappointing news. Her new school requires uniforms. Coraline groans at this restriction on her individuality, which just adds up completely to Coraline's character. To cheer her up, Mel gives Coraline a piece of paper to draw on, and the drawings Coraline creates then match a spiral pattern visible outside her window. This scene was cut because of pacing issues, and because it front loads too much mundane family dynamic situations before the actual supernatural kicks in, which is what people are there for. The final film gets to the mysterious door a lot quicker, which honestly keeps all of us engaged, right? We're here to see the creepiness. We're here to see the other mother. However, this deleted scene does add some character development that we ultimately was missing, showing us more of the Joneses' family dynamics and Coraline's artistic ability. So at the end of the day, does this scene quite fit in? I think it could have if they would have just trimmed it down a little bit, because it would have been interesting to see. The second deleted scene was Wybie's grandmother's sister. This deleted scene provides crucial backstory about Wybie's family and the Pink Palace's dark history. In the scene, Coraline is doing Wybie's hair, braiding it with ribbons. She comments on all the ribbons and braids, then asks,
"Your grandma's black, right?"
Just straight to the point, Coraline, aren't we? When Wybie confirms this, Coraline reveals,
"I just met her sister."
This scene would have explicitly confirmed what the film only hints at. Wybie's great aunt, his grandmother's twin sister, was one of the Beldam's victims. The doll that looks like Coraline was originally made to look like Wybie's great aunt before the other mother remodeled it. This deleted scene makes the connection more obvious and adds weight to why Wybie's grandmother won't rent to families with children and why she's so protective of her grandson. However, Selick cut it because it spells out information that's more effective when audiences piece it together themselves, which we all know we have done for years. You know how many Coraline theories there are? So it's definitely cool to leave things up to their imagination and cut scenes that would have explicitly explained them, because it allows the fans to be more into the IP, right? All of us love Coraline because of how much wasn't explained as well. The film's final version trusts viewers to make these connections through visual storytelling rather than explicit dialogue, which is just beautiful storytelling in my opinion. The third deleted scene was Coraline remembers the other world. This short deleted scene shows Coraline talking to someone, likely her parents, about the other world. She says excitedly,
"So you do remember."
"We knocked their socks right out of the ballpark."
The scene is quite vague, and without more context, it's hard to know exactly when it should have taken place or what it was meant to accomplish. It was cut because it didn't extend the plot or describe any kind of character development at all, but it does leave more theories to come from Coraline, in my opinion. I mean, imagine if she was talking to her parents and they did remember going. Wouldn't that be a whole different can of worms, right? What if her mother actually knew the other mother? The fourth deleted scene was the extended real-world montage. This deleted scene shows more of Coraline's miserable experience in the real world before she discovers the door. We see her bored, lonely, and frustrated as she explores the Pink Palace and interacts with the eccentric neighbors. The scene includes more interactions with Mr. Bobinski, Miss Spink, and Miss Forcible, establishing their quirky personalities in greater detail. However, like many deleted scenes, this was cut for pacing. The final film establishes these characters efficiently without dwelling on Coraline's boredom for too long. Although, I would have loved to see more of Mr. Bobinski. I mean, put your hands up in the comments if you guys like Mr. Bobinski, alright? More of him would just been perfect in my opinion. But I get it, pacing. But man, dude, do I wish that, you know, who cares how long a movie is? Can we just make a 3-hour long Coraline? I think it'd be fine. There was also a 5th deleted scene with additional otherworld details. This deleted material shows more of the fantastical otherworld, including extended sequences in various locations that didn't make the final cut. According to Selig's commentary, some of those sequences were fully storyboarded, but never animated because they would have made the otherworld sections too long and slowed down the narrative momentum, which I am kind of in a disagreement with. I'm actually mad that this wasn't a thing. When it comes to animation and type of animation worlds like the other world where it's so cool and interesting to see what's a part of it, show more of it. I feel like us fans, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, would have loved to see more of this other world in animation. Imagine if they built on more pieces that would have changed the story completely, or had Coraline experience different, you know, moments that would have changed her character arc and how she viewed the other world. I think that is beautiful if they would have animated that. I know it's more work, especially with stop motion animation, which kudos to them for doing, because holy crap. But man, do I want to see more of the other world. The 6th deleted scene is actually a compilation of various small moments that were cut for timing reasons. These include additional shots of Coraline exploring the Pink Palace, extended sequences with the cat, which, come on, please give me more of Keith David as the cat, bro. More interaction between Coraline and her parents, and small character moments that, while charming, didn't advance the plot. Henry Selick introduces this deleted scene by explaining that these are odds and ends that were removed to tighten the film's pacing. Again, pacing. We have understood that after all the videos we have talked about with Moana and Frozen and Zootopia, a lot of these things were cut for pacing, but some of them, man, they would have just been perfect to leave in my opinion. According to production notes, there was originally supposed to be a post-credit scene featuring the Ribbon Mice performing a dance before disappearing. Director Henry Selick was worried that audiences wouldn't stay through the credits to see it, so the scene was never fully completed. Which is crazy to think about, that Marvel now has changed everything and now everyone expects a post-credit scene. Even when it's not a Marvel movie, we all kind of are like, maybe I should look up if there's a post-credit scene. I know I'm not alone in this. So it's interesting because nowadays, if this was re-released in theaters, which I think it was a couple years back, I wonder if it had this post-credit scene fully animated at this point. Probably not, but they should have tacked it on with a re-release in the theaters. That would have been cool to see. Coraline, I mean, is perfect as is, with the cat disappearing through the mailbox and the camera pulling back from the pink.
Ad time. No ad time.
Palace. So having this post-credit scene could have undercut, you know, the film's eerie conclusion, but it would have been cool to see. You know, sometimes a dark movie, especially a kids movie that is dark already, having a little humor at the end, you know, kind of sets them up for a good night with their parents. Because I'm sure a lot of kids had nightmares from this movie. While Coraline is considered a faithful adaptation of Neil Gaiman's novel, there are significant changes that drastically altered the story. Understanding these changes helps us appreciate what was cut during the adaptation process. The single biggest change from book to film is the creation of YB Lovett, who doesn't exist at all in Gaiman's original novel. In the book, Coraline goes through her entire terrifying adventure completely alone. There's no neighbor boy to talk to, no one to help her, and no comic relief. It's actually pretty frightening. This isolation is actually central to the book's horror. Coraline must face the beldam with only her own courage and wit. Henry Selick added YB for several reasons. The first one being practical storytelling. Movies sometimes need dialogue to convey information and emotion. Not every movie can be Speedy Wally, and even that has some dialogue. In the book, much of Coraline's internal thought process comes through narration. On screen, having YB gives Coraline someone to talk to, allowing audiences to understand her thoughts and feelings through conversation rather than voiceover. The second reason was backstory integration. YB's grandmother being the landlady and his great aunt being one of the Beldam's victims provides crucial exposition about the Pink Palace's dark history. This information exists in the book but is conveyed differently. The third reason was the climax helper. In the book's ending, the Beldam's severed hand escapes into the real world and threatens Coraline. She defeats it herself, but it happens in a dream, which is somewhat unsatisfying. In the film, YB arrives to save Coraline from the hand, providing a more visual and dramatic climax. It creates a more cinematic ending and allows YB's character arc to come full circle. He protects Coraline just as his great aunt needed protection. Another reason was the audience surrogate. YB represents the audience's perspective as an outsider looking in. His skepticism and eventual belief mirror the audience's journey. YB Lovett has become such an iconic part of Coraline that it's hard to imagine the story without him, even though he was a complete invention for the film alone. Which leaves a question for you guys. Would you guys have wanted to see like a Coraline story by herself? Do you think YB was crucial to the story, or do you think it would have been more spooky if Coraline did it all herself? It's something to think about. In Neil Gaiman's book, Coraline is set in England, infused with British culture. The characters wore Macintoshes, eat salty taffy from Bristol, and talk about going down to the shops. For the film, Henry Selick moved the action to Ashland, Oregon, casting American actors in most roles. The only holdovers were Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, who remained delightfully British and eccentric. Because if they would have changed them, I mean, I don't think it would have been the same. This change doesn't impact the core story, but it does alter some of the book's identity and cultural impact. Gaiman's British sensibilities inform the original work in subtle ways that are lost in the translation to an American setting. But I can only guess that this also was changed to connect to more of an American audience because film does super well in America. Hollywood's a thing for a reason. But it wasn't just the setting that was changed. Coraline's personality and appearance also was different. In the book, Coraline has black hair and is described as polite, pragmatic, and quietly intelligent, a typical British children's book protagonist who navigates challenges with sensible practicality. In the film, Coraline has blue hair, is much more feisty and outspoken, and has a reckless streak. Dakota Fanning's vocal performance emphasizes Coraline's boldness and occasional brattiness. The film's Coraline is more flawed and goes through greater character development, transforming from a selfish, bored girl into a brave hero who appreciates what she has. The book Coraline is suspicious from the other world from the start, while film Coraline is initially seduced by it, genuinely enjoying the other mother's attention before recognizing the danger. This change raises the stakes. Film Coraline must not only escape the Beldam, but also overcome her own desires and learn to appreciate her real life. So when you take an outside perspective like that, it's like, wow, the film is way more deeper than the story. But the other thing that change that seems like a small detail but is actually very important is the door size. In the book, the mysterious door is regular sized, but in the film, it's a small door that Coraline must crawl through on hands and knees. Making this door small creates several different effects. The first is it evokes Alice in Wonderland imagery, reinforcing the parallel world concept. It makes the transition more physically uncomfortable and claustrophobic, which I can definitely agree to. I hate being in tiny spaces. It creates a visual metaphor for Coraline regressing to childhood and vulnerability, and it's more visually interesting in stop motion animation. I mean, literally, it's one of the most beautiful films. Like, literally, the tunnel being that purple lighted magical look definitely might have coaxed me as a kid to crawl through it as well. The film's iconic opening, showing the Beldam's hands delicately disassembling a rag doll and remaking it to look like Coraline, doesn't actually exist in the book. This opening is just pure storytelling brilliance, in my opinion. It immediately establishes a lot of things. The Beldam's craftsmanship and attention to detail, the sinister transformation of the doll, previously YB's great aunt, the Beldam's spider-like nature. I mean, those hands are absolutely creepy. And the film's eerie handmade aesthetic, which just kind of connects as like a metaphor to a doll being made. It's beautiful. Gaiman's book opens more conventionally with Coraline and her family moving into the Pink Palace. Selick's opening is more cinematic and creates immediate unease, which is why Coraline is spooky and just awesome. In the book's Otherworld, the garden is beautiful but relatively simple. In the film, the Otherworld garden becomes a massive, fantastical landscape that literally blooms into life before Coraline's eyes, eventually forming a portrait of her face made entirely of flowers. According to Henry Selick, this sequence was one of the most challenging to create. It required extensive planning and innovative stop-motion techniques to make flowers appear to grow and bloom naturally. This change showcases stop-motion animation's capabilities and makes the other world feel more magical and seductive. The garden becoming Coraline's portrait adds narcissistic appeal. The Beldam is literally giving Coraline a world that revolves around her, which is a crazy change from the book. I love that. Like, imagine just the garden being just beautiful. How does that make a kid want to stay there? But when you see it change and magically appear your face, I don't know. As a kid, you're like, I believe in magic, so this is awesome. Both versions also featured the Beldam transforming into a monstrous spider-like creature, but the film makes this transition much more elaborate and terrifying. In the book, the transformation is described, but left largely to imagination. In the film, we see every horrifying detail as the other mother's body elongates, her skin becomes white and papery, and her limbs become spindly, and she fully embodies arachnid horror. Like me, I am absolutely terrified of bugs, especially spiders, that I'm like, if this thing was real, bro, I'd be dead. I'd be dead. What am I saying? I would not be out of there fast enough. I'd die. I would be in shock and just die. This visual transformation is one of the film's most memorable and nightmarish moments, cementing the other mother as one of animation's scariest villains. Another change was that in the book, the three ghost children appear and tell Coraline about being trapped by the Beldam, but we don't get much detail about who they were. The film adds the connection to Wybie's great aunt, giving us at least one ghost child's backstory. This makes their fate more personal and raises the stakes. If the Beldam can trap children for decades or even centuries, Coraline is in some serious danger, which is why it's brilliant. There was also a full-on deleted scene where it was like a song by these ghost children, I believe, that also tell exactly what happened to them that was cut. That was released a couple years ago with the re-release of the movie in the theaters, and that was really cool to see because again, it shows that they had really thought about these ghost children before cutting them back to what they are in the movie. Both versions end with Coraline seemingly safe, but with an ominous sense that the danger might not be completely over. In the book, Coraline defeats the hand in a dream, which feels slightly anticlimactic. However, in the film, they did it a lot differently. Wybie helps Coraline destroy the hand by smashing it with a rock and throwing it down the well. The film then pulls back from the Pink Palace as the cat disappears through the mailbox, showing he can still travel between worlds. This leaves viewers with the unsettling question: if the cat can still cross over to the other world, is the door truly sealed forever? And I love that. I love leaving on this cliffhanger, this question that viewers as us fans can deep dive and make theories about. It's beautiful. Beyond specific deleted scenes, there were numerous animation concepts that were designed but never fully realized or were simplified during production. Early concept art shows much more elaborate sequences taking place in the mirror world, the dark space where the ghost children were trapped. Some of these sequences would have shown Coraline exploring this space in greater detail, discovering more about the Beldam's past victims. These were all cut because they slowed down the climax when tension needs to be at its highest, but it would have been cool to see. Early designs for the Beldam's final form were also more grotesque and disturbing. Some early concept art shows her as more explicitly spider-like, with additional legs and even more horrifying proportions. These were all likely toned down to keep the film from being too terrifying for younger viewers, and even with the changes, the final Beldam's transformation is still nightmare fuel. But imagine if it was even darker and scarier. Kids literally would not have slept that night. Because I know people that watched this movie as a kid that are still terrified by this movie, which I think is why it has such a cult following. Coraline was the first stop-motion animated feature designed and shot specifically for 3D. It wasn't just a gimmick. Selick used 3D as a storytelling tool. According to Selick, not only does shooting 3D capture the fact that all this stuff is real, it is also used to basically suck the audience in as Coraline is sucked into the other world. The real world is shot with flatter, more constrained 3D depth, while the other world explores the exaggerated depth and immersive dimensionality. This visual contrast reinforces the seductive appeal of the other world. It literally feels more alive, which is just awesome to be able to use a 3D piece of animation to show this other world is just better until it's not. Coraline pioneered several animation techniques that required creating new technology. The puppets could exhibit over 208,000 different facial expressions. For Coraline herself, there were over 207,000 possible face combinations, while her mother only had 17,000. This was achieved through 3D printing technology, one of the first major uses of 3D printing in stop-motion animation. Thousands of different faceplates were printed, allowing animators to create subtle, nuanced expressions. Originally, Henry Selick wanted to leave the seams visible in the characters' faces to elaborate the handmade nature of stop motion. However, Leica owner Phil Knight requested that the seams be removed digitally, creating a more polished final look. Which honestly would have been cool to see that, yes, because at the end of the day, everyone knows that these were puppets. These were claymations that were created. That would have been cool to see, like, yeah, someone really took the time and energy to do it if you left the seams in. But even a more polished look also leaves this up to more imagination and allows people to more focus on like what the art was than the things they built for it. But it would have been cool to see. Coraline was also staged in a massive 140,000 square foot warehouse in Oregon. The stage was divided into 50 lots, hosting nearly 150 sets. These included 3 miniature Victorian mansions, a 42-foot apple orchard with hundreds of tiny, individually crafted apples, a detailed model of Ashland, Oregon, including tiny banners for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and the elaborate Otherworld garden with hundreds of blooming flowers. Every element was handcrafted with excessive detail, even things that would barely be visible on screen. And this just shows how much time and effort was really put into this movie. It literally came down to making tiny little apples and flowers that bloom. That is beautiful. This blows my mind when I hear stuff like this as a fan, because it really makes me appreciate the movie even more because of how much work went into it. So there you have it, every major deleted scene, cut, or significant change in Coraline.
Again, a shout out to John PT. Thank you so much for this, and that's the end of the video.